Hi, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Bex. I'm mum to Finley, he's 14 months old, and I make videos about parenting, lifestyle and motherhood after infertility. So if those are the sorts of videos that you like, then don't forget to hit subscribe and the bell just underneath so you know when my videos go up. So I've wanted to make this video for a while, but I wanted to just leave it long enough to make sure that everything that we have done and put in place has worked for a sustained period of time before making any recommendations. So today's video I'll split up into a bit of a backstory about why we were having problems with Finley's sleep, and then I'll break it down into what we did about that and how useful we've found the changes that we've made. So I'll break it down to sort of 3 parts. So a bit of a backstory then. Finn was really good at sleeping until he was about 5 months old, maybe 4 or 5 months. Initially he was so sort of sleepy we had to wake him up for feeds. We did have feeding issues with him from the beginning really. I wanted to exclusively breastfeed but had problems doing so. So I can be fed, which is another video that I do want to do, but that's another story for another time. And we noticed changes in his sleep around the sort of 4 to 5 month period, where he had already been sleeping through from about 10 weeks maybe, and then around 4.5, 5 months that just seemed to stop. He'd always been very, very difficult to get down for a nap. He wasn't able to sustain a nap really for any long period of time. On average, naps would be about 25 minutes in length, and he seemed to get extremely distressed around sort of 3-4 o'clock, and we thought it was originally colic, and after about 4 to 5 months of meltdowns for hours on end that coincided with feeds, the doctors did eventually accept that it was a cow's milk protein intolerance, and his formula was switched from being a lactose intolerant milk to a specific formula. I'll leave a link to that video below. We noticed a change around that point and we soldiered on with it for a while, just thinking at first it was a developmental leap, and then there was teething, and so there just seemed to be a constant reason that we wanted to attach to the problems with sleep rather than just seeing them as sleep problems. And so this would have started around September-ish last year, so 2017. And by about the 9-10 month stage, so sort of January, February, me and Dan were just so exhausted. We just needed to catch a break, and it had got to the point where we were arguing over what to do next about it. I'm not very comfortable with the idea of leaving a baby to cry it out. If that's your thing and that's what you choose to do, then if that works for you, then brilliant for you. I have no problems with other people choosing whatever way of getting their baby to sleep, but it's just not something I felt comfortable with. We had tried it for I think maybe about 5 to 7 minutes and I just couldn't carry on with it. It made Finley more distressed, it made me more distressed, and it didn't seem to resolve anything. It just seemed to make Finley far more worked up and me far more worked up. So it's not something I felt I was comfortable with or could do. And so I scoured the internet just trying to find something that could help, and I stumbled upon a sleep specialist who was based down in the south of England, but does sleep consultations and sleep support over the phone or via Skype. And so this to me seemed like a really good solution. What drew me to her specifically was the fact that she has been NHS trained and has worked for the NHS for 25 years and trains other sleep specialists. But I gave her a bit of a grilling over the phone, to be honest, because it was important to me that if we were getting a sleep specialist involved, I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to be the cry it out route, because I didn't want to pay for someone to basically tell me to leave my child to cry it out. It's not something I felt that would be worthwhile to spend money on. And so the next bit of the video, I'm just going to talk about Evelyn's approach. If you want the details of the sleep specialist, I'll leave my email address on here. If you just send me an email, I'll pop you the details in a message. Evelyn's approach then. Before the phone consultation, she sent us a sleep diary to fill out for at least a week. I think because we were slightly delayed in our appointment, we'd made our appointment for like 2 weeks in advance, just due to holidays and things. We filled out a week and a half's worth of sleep diaries. We also had a really in-depth sleep questionnaire to fill in. When I say questionnaire, it makes it sound like it's sort of like a tick list type questionnaire, and this wasn't. This was a really comprehensive, in-depth report style questionnaire where you could fill in as much information as you felt would be useful for someone to know. And I sort of went to town on the detail with it, really. I just wanted to give as much information as I possibly could give to try and give Evelyn as good a chance as trying to get to the bottom of what was going on. The day rolled round for the telephone consultation, and it was about an hour in length, and we just were able to go through everything on the questionnaire that we had filled in. We discussed differences between adults' sleep patterns and children's sleep patterns. Around the 4-month point is where a newborn's sleep cycle shifts to that of an adult sleep cycle. It's almost at that point that's where a child's sleep cycle is sort of established and set, and so that's why we had experienced problems at that point. So during the conversation we talked about some of the problems we'd been having with Finley's sleep, which included things like we had gone from being able to just feed him, pop him into his cot, and he would just fall asleep instantly, to then experiencing real problems in trying to get Finley to sleep. A lot of it was sort of entwined with his cow's milk intolerance and reflux, which meant that he was very uncomfortable anyway straight after a feed. And because we were still waiting for a consultation appointment at the hospital, that was making things difficult. So we knew that was involved within the sleep problems, but we had found previously that once Finn was down for the night, he would just sleep through, and that had stopped, and he was now waking at least twice in the night. Sometimes it was every hour, sometimes every half an hour, and then Dan would be up at 5 o'clock in the morning for his start time for work. So we talked about some of the problems that we were experiencing. We knew there was something to do with white noise. Finn had a whisper, which was like a godsend to us. We really struggled before that to get him down for any sort of nap whatsoever, and the whisper was definitely helping with sustaining a nap for longer than sort of 20-25 minutes. But any sort of sleep aid like that, even the better ones with the cry sensors, they only go for a certain period of time, and then the cry sensor will kick in when the baby cries, but by that point it's already sort of too late. So we knew there was an issue to do with white noise, and we didn't really know what to do about that. And there were a couple of other issues which I'll go into later on. So back to the consultation, we went through what the issues were. So it boils down to 2 approaches really. There's gradual retreat, which is what we decided we wanted to go for, or there is cry it out if you wanted to go down that route. As Evelyn, would say, neither approach is better than the other. It's just different approaches work for different people. So it was really important to me that we didn't go down the cry out route, so we decided to choose the gradual retreat approach. Evelyn gave us overnight to decide which approach we wanted to go for, which I really appreciated. I didn't want to be put on the spot. She really clearly explained the difference between the two approaches. Gradual retreat is where you stay in the room for a period of time until the baby is fully asleep, and then you leave the room, and slowly, gradually over a period of time, that time within the room shorter and shorter until it is at the point where you can just pop them into the cot and leave them to it. It is a more long-winded approach, but I was happy to give it the time it needed as long as I had the assurance really that it was going to work. I was fully committed to trying to make that approach work as much as I could, because I just didn't want to go down the other route. And the cry out route is not quite as severe as it's made out to be. So it isn't a case of leaving a child crying for half an hour, all night. It's leaving them to cry for a set period of minutes dependent on the age, and then going in, settling, and leaving the room again, and just building that up. But you don't go past 15 minutes. So that's the two approaches, and like I said, we chose to go for the gradual retreat. Having gathered together all the notes and all the information, Evelyn created very individual tailored plans specifically for Finley using the information that we had given her. And we were then given a series of follow-up sessions that once we'd started to implement the sleep plan, we could then phone at pre-arranged appointments to discuss how we were doing. Once we implemented the sleep plan, we noticed an immediate change from the first night of following the plan. It was an immediate improvement. So we noticed that Finn just woke up maybe once that night, I think it was, and then the next night he slept through. And really within the first week we saw just a massive improvement. It was as though she'd created some sort of sleep spell. It was also definitely on our part down to consistency and following the plan. So the sort of things that were on the sleep plan that Evelyn had sort of pinpointed as being Finley's problems was quite a complicated case for Finley, because it was an amalgamation of a few different issues. So one, she identified that the reflux was definitely causing an underlying problem with sleep, which we knew of anyway. Two, she decided that there was a definite sleep association with white noise, and she said that we would either have to pick white noise on all night or no white noise. Previous to that, we'd had whisper on and the radio on, radio 4 really quietly, just so it sounded like in the background, but that wasn't really working. Finley was also still sleeping in our room at that point, so he was about between 9 and 10 months old at this point, and he was still in our room, just mainly because I didn't feel ready at that point for him to move into his own room, and because we were up so many times in the night, it just didn't seem worthwhile to me to move him into another room. But we did decide that we would try to move him into his own room, just because when we came up to bed, that was unsettling him and sometimes waking him up. And then she also pinpointed the nighttime feed as being an issue. I didn't ever feed Finley to sleep, but I do know sometimes Dan would feed Finley to sleep. I'd also got into the bad habit of sort of soothing Finley by rubbing his back, just because he'd been so refluxy and so uncomfortable that sometimes I just soothed him like that to send him off to sleep, and we both knew they were bad habits, and originally we had none of that when we put Finley down for the night, but we'd sort of lapsed into bad habits because of just trying to, out of desperation really, trying to find something to help him go to sleep when he was uncomfortable because of feeding problems. She also felt he wasn't necessarily getting enough calories in the day, and what he was doing was not necessarily taking the full amount of a bottle at his bedtime feed, because he knew he was going to get a feed in the middle of the night, and sort of relying on having that feed in the middle of the night. So she wanted us to cut that back. And to be honest, I was very reluctant to do so, because I just felt because he was baby-led weaned, I didn't want to cut down on milk because I wasn't, with baby-led weaning there was no guarantee of how much food he was taking in. And Evelyn was completely understanding of that. So what she also wanted me to do was to fill out a food diary at the same time as the sleep diary. So we just used the sleep diary templates and I just filled in a food diary on them at the same time. And that was long-winded, but I knew it was going to be worth it. And we did that for about 3 weeks. We would submit sleep diaries to her at the end of the week. She would look at them over the weekend and then we would discuss them in our telephone consultations, like the follow-up sessions. And it was just a case of making sure with baby-led weaning that I was trying to incorporate high-calorie, good fats. So, for example, avocado into his meals, particularly sort of the evening meal. Just trying to up the amount of snacks that he was eating and just trying to make sure that I was making a note of how much food he was having. And then what we did was slowly taper down the middle of the night feed just by 1 ounce at a time, just until the point where we're at 1 ounce. And then when we got to that point, we stopped the middle of the night feeds. So this isn't sort of a quick fix, this approach, but I was saying total it took maybe 6 to 8 weeks. But in that 6 to 8 week period, we noticed just a phenomenal shift in Finley's sleeping habits. And then the follow-up appointments were just to make sure that everything was embedded completely. During that time, Finley was under the consultant at the hospital. He'd swapped formula and then had changed from ranitidine to omeprazole, which just helped things straight off. They obviously were factors that were going to help his sleep regardless of any sort of sleep program. But I also noticed Finley's daytime naps starting to really improve and become consistent. He'd gone from just having 20-25 minutes, if I was lucky, with no sort of routine. Every time I tried to implement a routine, he was like the baby who wouldn't be put into any sort of routine. I tried to follow his lead and there was no consistency whatsoever to any sort of routine that I tried to follow his lead with. But we started noticing a complete improvement with naps. We made the decision to, when we moved Finley into his own room, go for white noise off completely. And although it did work, it was inconsistent. Some nights he would wake up and cry and he needed some sort of white noise to soothe him back. So we just decided to go straight for white noise on all the time. So we got a tablet that we then just kept in Finley's room just for white noise. So it's on throughout the night, all night, and then in the morning we just turn it off. And that's just made a massive difference. We did have a couple of hiccups after the initial success, and that related to the clocks going forward. So we just about got into this perfect routine of popping Finley down. He would just go to sleep like that. But because the clocks went forward, 7 o'clock was now 8 o'clock, and it was difficult to try and transfer him from that sort of time backwards, if you like. So we did email Evelyn just for a bit of advice, which she was happy enough to give. We also experienced another hiccup when Finley transitioned from having a morning nap and an afternoon nap to then just one nap a day. He consolidated his sleep, and it was now one morning nap of about 2 hours in length, which was just a complete dream come true to me. I've just never had that from him being born. Never had that sort of consistent nap time that I could depend upon, that I could, prep tea with or anything like that. So it's like I'd magicked up this sustained period of time from nowhere that I'd never had before previously. But we did have a tricky couple of weeks where I was swapping and changing from an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon, or one morning nap of 2 hours in length. and then not being able to quite make it until tea time and having to sort of give him a power nap in the afternoon, which was like the classic danger nap sort of time scale of between 4 and 5, which was just not the best idea. So we had maybe about a fortnight of trickiness while his body adjusted to being on one nap a day, and we've not looked back since then. So from February, and we're now in June, his sleep has just completely transformed. I can now just pop him down for a nap at about 9:10 in the morning and know that he'll wake up around 11:10, which means that I have 2 hours to either prep tea, do some tidying up, do a bit of filming for the channel, just to know that bedtime's 7 o'clock, and to know that we might occasionally have a slightly disturbed night's sleep if it's teething, but apart from that, just a full night's sleep, and it's just a godsend. Like I said, if you do want Evelina's details, then I'll pop my email address here, and just drop me an email, ask for the details, and I'll send them to you. I can't recommend her highly enough. If you are experiencing sleep problems, I completely understand where you're coming from, and if that's the case, just pop a comment below and I'll try and help you out where I can. If you did enjoy this video, if you did find it useful or helpful, then please like it, share it with someone that you know that might also be experiencing problems with their baby's sleep, and don't forget to hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!